Hi.
Hi, how are ya?
How are you?
I like the name on your screen now, Yo Mitts.
Wait, okay, I had to turn you up.
I said I like the name that it shows up on your name shows up on Zoom as Yo Mitts.
Yeah.
I like it.
Oh,
How are you feeling? Sounds like you're still a little under the weather, huh?
I feel fine. I just have these coughing fits that just you never know when they're gonna come.
Yeah, that is so irritating.
Last night was good though. I didn't cough at all. It was so nice.
Oh, good. So you actually got some sleep.
Yeah.
Good, good. That's excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm sorry, I got to turn to the right page here. Let's see. So how was your last week? Didn't we talk about gentle nutrition last week, right? Yeah. Okay. Why is mine having a hard time getting to the right place here? Okay, here we go. All right, so how did the gentle nutrition, did you have a chance to even think about that anymore this week?
No.
About the same as usual?
Yeah, I'm still stuck at trying to slow down when I eat and enjoy every bite and stop when I'm full and eat when I'm hungry and feel like that's where I'm at.
Isn't it amazing how, like, even though logically we know how much nicer it is to do it that way, what a challenge that is? Like when I texted you the other day, I was trying to force myself to sit down and just eat. And it is so hard for me not to want to do a second thing all the time. So I totally get that. It's a struggle.
Yeah.
So tell me, what did you work on? What things stood out to you this week? Did you learn anything?
I don't even remember. I didn't even write in my journal either.
When did you get sick?
It was Monday or Tuesday.
So you've just had kind of a survival week.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did that seem to affect your eating this week?
I don't know if it did.
You didn't feel like sometimes when I'm sick, I feel like all I want to do is eat. Other times when I'm sick, I feel like I can't eat anything. Sometimes it might affect whether I feel depressed or whether I am bored or whether, I don't know, things like that.
Yeah, I don't think I did. I was thinking about it, like, should I, like that saying, starve a fever or feed a cold or whatever that is. I was like, what is that? Should I be eating or should I not be eating?
I would still trust your body. If your body's like, I really don't feel like eating, I wouldn't shove stuff down. Keep yourself hydrated, eat enough to be okay. And if your body's starving to death, wonder why and kind of go from there. But if it's genuinely hungry, you get what it needs.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So then tell me about your week. If the sickness didn't affect it very much, tell me about your week. What was it like?
I'm going to move some stuff around here so I can see there. So I can see you. I'm at my double screen, so if it looks like I'm not looking at you, that's like.
I know. I've got the same thing going on. So when I'm looking over here, I'm totally looking at what we're doing. So.
So let's see. How was my week? So Maya was on spring break, and so we did some fun things. We went shopping one day and bought a bunch of fabric, and so we started some sewing projects.
That's right. You were going to start that this week. How was that?
Good. Yeah, that was fun.
Did it feed your soul like you were hoping it would?
Yeah, I think so.
Good.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
We had some work done on our house, so that was good. Got an electrician out here to run some wires and work on our TV and sound and all that kind of stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
that was good. Um, yeah, I don't know.
You feel like your eating was okay?
Yeah,
Good.
it was probably normal.
Okay, that's good.
Not what normal is right now.
But you know what? That's good. You're not depressed over having thrown everything out the window, and you weren't perfect, but you're just kind of normal,
Yeah,
right? And that's not a bad place to be.
yeah.
We've been in worse places.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's great. That's great. Okay, so
Do know I can tell that I'm gaining weight, and I don't like it, but I keep trying to talk to myself, it's okay, this is just temporary, I'm working on this, and I just keep thinking about where I'm at and the progress I made and the peace that I'm getting with food, and so I just just keep going and keep talking to myself.
yeah, I think that's the hardest thing, and I think that's what keeps most people from signing up for a program like this is that fear of, if I don't do the traditional diet world, then I'll just keep getting bigger and bigger. So then when we struggle or we don't see it going the direction we want, then it is hard to kind of keep trusting in yourself, trust in the process.
Yeah.
And I always have to remind myself that your brain has to change before your body can change permanently. Right. Anytime my body changes first, it always changes back.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's a good thing to be reminding yourself. Did you have a chance to read the chapter this week on raising intuitive eaters?
I know that I've read it before, but this week I did read. I got to like page 236.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to encourage you to finish it as soon as you can. And here's why. Because I usually do the same thing where I make it through most of the chapter. By the end, you're kind of like, yeah, I get what it's saying. And you kind of like, don't take it that seriously. But I found some of the coolest stuff at the end of this chapter that to me really was helpful, whether you're trying to deal with kids or not.
Okay.
And let's talk about some of that. But one of the things, and I'll just jump to it straight away since we're talking about it, they give an example of a boy. Let me see if I can figure out what page it is from my notes. That, it's page 246 under where it says Bobby.
Okay.
And as you read his story, he's a teenager who was overweight. His parents were very much into dieting, and they finally realized there was a problem. They brought him in but talked about how successful he was, and they didn't focus at all they never focus on weight or your size or anything like that, but they just focus on how you feel inside. In fact, one of the things I love about this chapter is as it talks through helping children change, the principles are exactly the same as helping us change. But for some reason, it's easier to see when you're talking about your kids. Like, we don't want our kids to feel ashamed of themselves. We don't want them to be paranoid about that kind of thing. So they talk about how helping children actually recognize, what am I feeling physically and emotionally? So it is really kind of interesting to watch how these children change. But on this particular one, he's a teenager and kind of goes through the steps of, like, he was so thrilled when they told him that there wasn't any food he couldn't have. That was like the first thing that he was like thrilled, because his parents were constantly like, you shouldn't eat that, you shouldn't eat that, you shouldn't eat that. And then he said his first goal that he set was to find more enjoyable foods, because he had to admit that, like, he would eat out of vending machines at school and, like, halfway through realize, I don't even like this, but keep eating it anyway. So his first goal was just to replace foods he didn't like that he was eating with, make sure that they were foods he liked. And that's a pretty easy first goal, right? Although I find myself still struggling with that once in a while, right? But I think that was a great first goal. Just start letting yourself enjoy food. And then talks about how that was successful and he was enjoying that. So then his second goal was to throw away food once he noticed he was full. And I like that as a goal. You know, we're always talking about how it's hard to stop sometimes when you're full, especially, if there's an emotional reason going on. But sometimes it just tastes great or whatever, and we don't want to get rid of it. So that was just an actual goal. If once I realize I'm full, get rid of the rest. And then his third goal was, and all of this is on 246, all he said is sifting out the eating triggered by defiance and rebellion freed him to look at the time at which he was eating for deeper emotional reasons. Okay, so yeah, so it says after several months he started to realize that he was eating to rebel against his parents who were constantly telling him what he should and shouldn't eat. And we all know what that feels like to have your parents tell you what to do. And it's funny, they talk about teenagers, but I feel the same way when my mom tells me what to do now. Here, I'll give you a little example. I should talk kind of quiet. But yesterday I'm going to church and I wore leggings underneath my skirt because I was freezing to death. And I have a really long skirt on. And on the way up to the church, I have to walk really slow with my mom with her walker. And I can see in the reflection of the door that my leggings are showing a few inches. And I thought to myself, when I get in there, I'm going to pull those up a little bit. Then my mom says, is that the style now to wear leggings underneath your skirt? And I said, well, that's my style today. And then she goes, oh, I thought you were taking lessons from Connie. No, Connie is an old lady in our ward who horrendously, like horrendously. She crochets things onto all of her clothes and she wears regular pants under her skirts that hang out like a foot and a half, you know. And I was like so offended. Do you think I pulled those leggings up?
Nope.
Nope. I was like, yeah, I think I'll just leave those hanging out there. So I could appreciate where Bobby's coming from a little bit. Anyway, so then he says, so his third goal was to start figuring out when he was eating for deeper emotional reasons. But he didn't even start that until, oh, sorry, it's the very last line of 246 on 247.
Oh, okay.
And he talks about, you know, once he kind of realized, first of all, he got to where he was liking everything he ate. Then he got to where he could stop when he was full. And then he started saying, okay, what emotions am I trying to feed with food? And then he starts, you know, identifying the things that he can do to find joy in his life without having to deal with food and finding ways to soothe himself that didn't include food. But what really stood out to me, because, you know, we have that eternal diet brain sometimes. In the middle of page 247, let's see, it's the 1, 2, 3, like fourth new paragraph down. It says, after about a year and a half of working toward reclaiming his intuitive eating, he had lost 2 sizes and he had to go shopping because he had to go 2 sizes down. And I thought, you know what, we're so time oriented. We want this to happen right now. And so like this, we sign up for a 6-month thing and you think, okay, in 6 months I could be this much smaller, right? And then we get really freaked out when in 6 months we're not, or we're bigger, or we're, you know, but I imagine for him, if you think back to his beginning goal had nothing to do with not eating less. It had to do with, you know what, I'm feeding myself stuff I don't like. So he changed it to stuff he liked. There is a very good chance that he was gaining weight at that point, right? Very good chance. And yet that was a really important part of the process for him to change his brain and to change his relationship with food. And so I don't want you to get discouraged when the scale is doing this. I mean, I've been trying now for a long time. I don't even know what I weigh right now because I realized that I realized the scale was playing games with me even more than I thought. Like you always know it does, right? But I started to realize things like when I was doing well, my brain would start, because of all the messed up beliefs I had growing up, like, oh, you don't deserve this, you know, you're going to fail, blah, blah, blah. So even if I was doing well and seeing good numbers I was happy with, there was another part of my brain sabotaging myself too. Yep. And so I was like, you know what? They're totally right. I need to just completely take the scale out of the picture. And this kid hadn't weighed himself. They call every time during this time. They didn't weigh him at all during this year and a half. It was just his process of changing and doing his stuff, and his body naturally eventually went down. Yeah. And then you think, you know, he was so successful. When you finish reading this story, he enjoyed the process so much. He was really healthy. His cholesterol went back down to where it should be, and his weight went healthy and everything. And he had a cardiologist. I don't know why he had a cardiologist. I must have missed that part. But anyway, he had a cardiologist that was so excited by his progress that he ended up asking Bobby to come and speak to other doctors and patients and stuff. And he lists here the things that he included in his talk, the main points, and you'll see those in bullet points. But I like this because you can apply it to yourself. And this chapter is meant to be like, okay, here's how you do it for kids, but it's also how you do it for yourself. So the first step says, no one was pushing me to do this. So in other words, there's no shame, no force, right? This wasn't a competition. There's no pressure to lose weight or get on a scale. It was about how he felt. And I love that because your parents can't feel for you. Your spouse can't feel for you. It's all about how you feel. I never felt any deprivation. I never felt guilty. It was a lifestyle change, not a diet. Before this work, Mother told me I'd have to watch what I ate for the rest of my life. What a relief to know that you don't have to be paranoid. To me, that's honestly been one of my favorite things about this. Like today we're driving to Arizona for spring break, and I don't have to freak out about what snacks am I going to have in the car and which restaurant are we stopping at and how many points do I have left and did I save them all? And like, oh, phew, okay. And then he makes a great point. He says, people don't want to be ambushed in order to scare them. People don't respond to fear. Instead of being told to lose weight, people need to be given the tools to know what to do and how to stop and when enough is enough. When people overeat, they're doing it for a reason, which we have to say that for ourselves. Okay, I'm overeating. Let's figure out what the reason is. People don't want to be pushed to do it all at once. It's okay if it takes a year and a half or 2 years, whatever. It's fine. And when people say food is bad and you shouldn't eat it, oh, I love this part. When people say that food is bad and you shouldn't eat it, you don't get the good taste of the food. Like your brain is not even enjoying the food because now you just feel feelings instead. And he said, you get the feeling of rebellion when you eat that food, and rebellion feels good. I thought that is so, so true. I love it. Anyway, that was one of my favorite parts of the chapter. And so you'll want to read his story. It's really good. But all their examples they give of the kids in this chapter, I think, are pretty amazing. What things stood out to you in the parts that you did get to read?
I didn't underline anything or anything.
Mm-hmm.
I did like the stories. I was thinking about other people and like, oh, I know someone like that or something like that. When I should have been looking at me like, oh yeah.
No, but that's good too. That's good too, because we're only one kind of eater. We have one kind of experience. It's really helpful to look at other people and see what worked for them. So for example, the way I raised my kids and the way my sister-in-law raised her kids, very different. My family really struggled with food because I really struggled with food. And we did, I was doing the dieting all the time and counting points and all that stuff. And my sister-in-law, she loves to bake. I mean, when I say loves, like if I go over there for game day, she's got 5 massive desserts out and she loves to bake. So they always have junk at their house, always. There's never a restriction on when they can eat it or how much they can eat. It's always just been like, whatever, and she always fixes good, healthy meals as well. But there's always junk around their house. And how obsessed do you think their kids are with junk? Not at all. Not at all. They like it and they have it and they're like, whatever. It's like, because it's always going to be there. My kids, it was like, oh my gosh, there's ice cream in the fridge and we shouldn't have it. So let's go get it. Right. That's kind of the different attitude. So when I was reading all these different things, I was like, oh, I really wish I had mastered this before.
Yeah.
And I could have saved my kids a lot of heartache. And now I've got to try to model it for them and hope they find it themselves.
Yeah. I'm like right in the middle. Like I kind of feel like it's too late with Dawson, but I still have a chance with the girls, but he's still here for another few months. So I do feel like there is hope. So
well, did you read the parts where they talk about how to approach your kids and say, this is what we're doing differently?
Yeah.
Have you ever done that?
Not totally, but I think they know what's happening. Like I've mentioned things before,
So it wasn't a formal, like, I'm
Right.
announcing that we're changing.
Yes.
So it's good. I think anytime that you feel, you follow the spirit, if it tells you, hey, here's a good principle to share, be
Yeah.
like, you know what, this thing I'm doing in my program and I really love it. You may want to try that. It really is whatever. And you can describe how it helps you.
Yeah.
But those things I think they make a big difference. But that was one of my fears, is that it was, way too late to do anything.
Yeah.
And I'm realizing that even now that my kids are all out of the house, I still have an influence for them. Like, I can continue to diet the rest of my life and they'll constantly look at me as the mom who's struggling with her weight, or I can find peace with it. And they're still watching, and as they're trying to find peace, they're learning from what I'm doing, and they ask questions. So how do you do this? And my daughter's got her 1-year-old now, and who's now into solid food, and she just had her first cake on her birthday, and that kind of stuff. And she asked me, so what is the book that you teach about this? So I copied this whole chapter and emailed it to her, and I just said, do with it what you will, because none of us want to be told by our moms what to do. But I just said, I wish I had known this 30 years ago,
Yeah.
and things would have been a lot more peaceful at our house. Meals kind of were a war at our house. We were you're not leaving the table till you eat. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Yep. And you better try this or else. And
yep, you're not leaving the table until you drink the rest of your milk. I'm like, oh man, our lives could have been so much easier, and we would have all been a lot happier and healthier. But I had no idea. You just do it the way your parents do it, So what were your experiences as a child with respect to hunger and fullness, and how your parents respected that or didn't respect that?
I don't remember a lot, but I do remember like sitting at the table. I was so stubborn. I know where my son gets it from. I would sit there for hours because I did not want to eat what was there, and they made me sit there. And I don't know what the outcome was, if I just eventually went to bed, or I don't remember that, but I just remember I'm not eating that.
And it's not about the food, is it? It's
Uh,
totally about your sense of, you can't make me do this.
yeah, probably. Some
Yeah.
of the stuff though, I was like, I don't like that. I'm not eating that.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
I'm sure most of it was the stubbornness.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what I did is I ate it because I really had that fear of my parents. Like, you do what we say, but you still resent it,
Mm-hmm.
right? You still have that resentment. If they win, nobody wins.
Right.
If you think you win, you lost.
Right.
Yeah, true. So what kind of positive examples did you have around you? Did you have any positive examples of people with healthy eating relationships? Were they all negative, or share some of both with me? What was mainly in your house?
Well, it was just my mom, my dad, and my sister. My dad was gone all the time. He was a golf pro, and he was gone from sun up to sundown.
Mm.
I don't think he ate much. Like, I remember he wouldn't eat during the day, and then he'd come home and have a big, huge dinner, and it was just like piled on with ketchup and all this stuff. And
Because he was starving.
yeah,
Yeah.
and my
And
mom.
yet he probably felt like that was okay because he hadn't eaten all day.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Did he have a weight issue at all?
He was probably a little bit overweight, but
Not big.
not, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the only time he's eating in front of you, he's got massive amounts of food.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Right.
And then my mom, she's a Weight Watcher lifetime member. I'm sure she was dieting the whole time I was growing up. I don't really remember. But I do remember when we go to the golf course, we would always have to have a diet soda.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember how that all went down, or if they were worried about our weight, or.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember, I think we've had this conversation before. Always, like, I felt like I was always the fat one of the group, of all my friends, and everyone else was skinnier than me. And then, of course, when I look back at pictures, I was like, oh wow, I'd kill for that body now.
Oh man, if we all had $1 for every time we've had a
Yeah,
thought like that.
yeah,
Yeah. So were there things said in your home, expected in your home that made you feel that way? Did you come up with that yourself?
Hmm. I don't remember.
Would be an interesting thing to kind of keep that question going on in your mind. See if you can remember any times where you were, shamed about it or comments made. I know in our family there was never any intent to put me down, but there was the constant, if you just lose 10 more pounds, just
Oh,
just 10 more, you'd be perfect.
my grandpa was like that. He always told me I needed to lose weight. I didn't see him very often, so that was good. he
Thank
wasn't.
goodness. Yeah.
He didn't live here, so.
But it
But
sticks in your head.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's, for me anyway, when somebody would say something like that to me, it took away that sense that I was somehow, that me, myself, deep inside was okay. It's like, I'll be okay if I do this,
Hmm.
if I meet this expectation. And it seems like, especially with your parents, your grandparents, your family, you just want to be loved for who you are.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they may be concerned about something on the side, but for me, that really interfered with that.
Yeah.
And I don't remember ever getting any comments from my dad, but he would comment on other women, and
Um,
especially on if they were really sexy, right? If they're really skinny, he would make positive comments about them all the time. And which I think is completely inappropriate, but that was the message that was in my head, that you need to look like that, basically, right? Yeah. So interesting how those comments make a huge difference. So I shared with the example of my sister-in-law who created a pretty healthy relationship with food in their house, even though it's cram packed with junk over there. It's funny, she'll make them, and then I think half the time she just gives most of them away. They do like to eat them, but they can't possibly eat as much as she likes to bake, so that they end up taking it to other people. But so, do you have any people in your life that you've watched be like that, or similar, have a positive example?
um, I don't know. I don't know about their families, but I have friends and family members who just eat intuitively and don't have problems. Like I'll watch my sister-in-law and my friend, they just won't eat all day because they just aren't hungry or they just don't think about it. They're busy doing other things. And I'm like, how do you do that? How do you not think about food all day, you know?
I know. And it's funny, the better I'm doing on my intuitive eating, the more I actually get that. The more you struggle, you're like, what? My husband does all the time. I just was so busy, I forgot to eat. And I think that's when you cancel the rest of your life and you go eat.
Right.
What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting, the discussion in here. I'm sure you probably read it, about how to talk to your kids and just say, your body's going to tell you when you've had enough, and this is kind of what hunger. Do you know what hunger feels like? Do you know what fullness feels? I mean, I wish I had done that with my kids from the time they were really little.
Yeah.
In my house, there really wasn't a discussion about what hunger and fullness felt like.
No, no.
And my parents didn't stop when they were full, so that wasn't something that was taught to us. Both my parents are quite heavy, especially my dad, but both of them have been heavy my whole life. And I remember, I have a very vivid memory one time of hot chocolate chip cookies coming out of the oven. I'm pretty sure we didn't even let them begin to cool off before we ate them all, right? There was like a competition to hurry and get them while you could, because things like that were really rare in our house. But if I went to my friend Stacy's house, they had cookies all the time in their cookie jar that would go stale, and they would throw them away. And I was like, who are you people? And then I'd go to their house, and that's all I could think about was, how can we get some of those cookies in the cookie jar? Because I couldn't get enough of them. But they were like, whatever, you can have them if you want to, So it's just thinking about that and how we change it for our children. Um, one thing I like on page 227, it talks about your role as the parent is powerful. And I think that's really true no matter how old your kids are. Yes, it's really powerful for when they're really little, but we're not in that stage anymore. And so if you look at the basic guidelines there, think about if you were to apply these simple things now, right? Stay neutral when you're serving food, right? So never making comments about what they choose, don't choose, how much, how little. Eating the variety of foods ourselves and appreciating food together as a family, right? So we can always do that. And then this part I really messed up on as a parent, not bribing, rewarding, or attempting to comfort with food.
Me too.
Yeah, so that's a hard one. But the great thing is now we still do nice things for our kids all the time, no matter how old they are. And it's kind of fun to think about, like, do I need to bring a birthday cake, or could I bring a nice book that I found? Or could I don't know, just thinking of ways to not make food the center of life, I think is a good little shift to make, even if it's just a tiny shift right now.
Yeah.
Let's see. Just looking at the story about those twins, page 227.
Oh, yeah. That was interesting.
That was interesting. So I'm just reminding myself here real quick. Oh yeah, this is when the one kid liked more play food than the other, and so dad started getting on her case a little bit, right?
Yeah, and she was overweight and the other one was thin.
Yeah. And so then she has the day where she gets 2 bags of M&Ms, offers one to her sister. Sister doesn't want them, so she takes them both in her room and hides to eat them. And it was so interesting to read about how the mom handles that, because it was very different than how I would have handled it as a parent. Right? Yeah. But very insightful. It was like, I like how she was able to teach and say, you don't have to sneak this. You can have as much as you want. I want you to eat nutritious food too. You like nutritious food, right? And she's like, yeah, I like this, and that's great. You can have as much as you want, but you don't need to sneak it. Because I think sneaking food was a huge root of my problem, was that need to like get it where nobody could see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anything stand out to you in that example besides that?
I like it all for myself and for my kids. I do.
Yeah, and I like
the kids down and say, I'm so sorry for how this all went down with it.
I know. I have apologized to my kids a million times, right? We just do the best we can. But I also thought I liked that example because it was also a realistic example of kind of a conflict between parents when you're trying to do this.
Yes.
Because just because I changed to this way of eating does not mean my husband agrees with it.
Yeah.
Right. And I think if we had tried to change our way of eating when the kids were little, it would have been really challenging because, my husband was more the enforcer and you will sit here, and I was more like, hurry so dad won't be mad. You know what I mean? So it would be a challenge when you have one parent who feels strongly and another one who feels strongly the other direction. And so I like the fact that, kind of showed that reality of having to sit down and explain. And I love the fact that this book has 1 million studies.
Yeah.
Show what actually happens, and how they can be more helpful to their kids. And anyway, I thought that was really helpful.
Yeah.
And then the one story that broke my heart was the one about Nancy on page 229.
That was awful.
That was awful. And the fact that it never even got any better.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And then they just ended the story. I'm like, and then what? What happened?
I know. She's probably on a therapist's couch today trying to work it out. I don't know. But I did feel really bad for her. But I also felt bad for her mother.
Yeah.
Because her mother is exactly what we're trying to get away from. Her mother is terrified. Yeah. And she probably thinks that she's saving her child. If I can keep her from ever eating sugar, she won't be in the mess I'm in, is my guess of what's going on at home. And as a result, she's just teaching her daughter not to trust herself at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, really interesting. So then when it gets to the part about healing deprivation, I thought that was really good. That's where on page 230, it's the story about Pamela and Eric and how the son really only wanted dessert. And once they started putting the healthy food and the desserts on the table at the same time, I've wondered, would my husband have gone for that? I don't know. I would have had to do some serious talking. But it makes so much sense to take away the allure of the dessert.
Yeah.
Right. And just say, yeah, choose whatever you want. Eat till you're full. Then we'll put it away. I thought, man, what would my husband do if I had stuck cookies on the table with the chicken and the vegetables and the rice? And yet, how interesting. I kind of wish I could go back in time and play with that.
Yeah.
And see what would happen. Because it just makes sense to me. Let's see. Steps for protecting and reinforcing your child's intuitive eating experience. I think that's pretty geared towards people with really young kids.
Yeah.
As a grandma, I like those guidelines. I thought it was interesting thinking about my granddaughter and how I can help her at this point, because we're still not done being an influence, right?
Yeah.
The ones that are different than what I did as a parent, like I gave my kids juice in their cups to get them to drink and stuff. And they're talking about just getting them used to water and stuff before a lot of juices helps them not feel like they constantly need a sweet taste. And having the less sweet vegetables introduced first, things like that I didn't do. I still like the idea of putting a variety of food on the table. The tricky part is, as a grandma, you also have to do what your kids want you to do.
Yeah.
So if I'm feeding her lunch, I mean, I need to ask my daughters, is it okay if I throw the cookies and the grapes and the sandwiches on the table at the same time and let her pick what she wants? Because you don't want to go against what they say. But if they say yes, I think I'm going to do it. But it kind of has to coincide with what they do at home too.
Yeah.
A little tricky. Packing lunches, have little play food. I like the part they keep stressing not to be a short order cook.
Yeah.
Because I felt like that sometimes. That's one of the things I didn't like about being on Weight Watchers. I felt like, I'm fixing myself this, and then you guys could have this. That got better as Weight Watchers changed, though. But I like the fact that they say, go ahead and put a big variety of food out. Make sure there's something everybody's going to like. Yeah. So that you're not having to go specially make anything. But you're also not saying, well, all we're having is this, and if you don't like it, tough, you're starving.
Yeah. So what do you do with kids that can make whatever, make their own food? Do you let them do that if they don't like?
We didn't really address that. What are your thoughts on it?
I don't know. I struggle with that because I, went to all this work and this is what we're having, but at the same time, if they don't want it, I mean, there's things that I don't like too,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
How could you maybe mitigate that ahead of time? So for instance, if say you're going to have fish for dinner and you know that one kid hates fish, maybe you could make sure that you have the sides are all things that they like. You could, I don't know. I think it would depend on the family. So if it were me and I like fish and I know Johnny hates fish, I might throw a chicken breast in there.
Yeah.
And cook it with the fish and just say fine. But there's other times where, like, for me, I think you have to look at the principle. So throughout this whole chapter, it talks about having plenty of good foods around, healthy foods, play foods, whatever, especially healthy foods, because it does stress, have healthy foods and a variety of them around that are easy to access for kids, as well as some play foods. But you want to have them be used to healthy foods and have them easily accessible. And then they say, don't restrict when or how much they can have of those. Yeah. So if they come home from school and they want to get something, great. If 2 hours later they want something, great. Although there's also got to be that, okay, we're eating in this much time, so make sure that you're, hungry enough to eat with this kind of thing.
Yeah. There's that too. I mean, and it does talk about that in the book, when you're going to be going out to eat, or that there's going to be a time when your family's eating, you kind of have to adjust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And, maybe depending on the family, one thought that just went through my head, so don't take it as gospel, but one of my thoughts was, Okay, if they ate so much that they're not hungry at family dinner time, you say, okay, well, you don't have to eat, but you need to come visit with us anyway. This is
Yeah.
our only chance that we get to catch up. So I want you to come sit with us anyway.
Yeah.
And you don't have to eat, and then trying to make meals that are good enough that they would want to eat the meal.
Yeah.
That's a challenge for me because I don't really like to cook and I'm not a very good preparer. But, I think so. If you kind of stick with the principles where you're not making the food the big deal, but you're making the relationships the big deal.
Yeah. Okay.
I had a friend when we lived in Las Vegas who would let her daughter was the pickiest eater I've ever seen in my life. No kidding. And she would let her make something different if she wanted it all the time. And at the time I thought, okay, you were just teaching her to, I don't know, to do whatever. I thought it was not right at the time. And now I think, maybe it wasn't such a big deal.
Yeah.
As long as the girl's fixing it, cleaning it up and whatever, maybe it was not such a big deal. So I think for me, maybe that's the bottom line principle for me is taking the emotional charge out of the food, the positive or negative charge, taking the positive out of the desserts, taking the negative out of the vegetables and just saying, you know what, I trust you to pay attention to your body. I trust you to know how much you need. I trust you to stop when you've had enough. And I can't determine that for you. I think that in itself would be a huge compliment as a kid to think that your parents actually trust you, So anyway, that's one of my thoughts on that. Anything else you can think of on that one?
I don't think so.
Okay. That next part is just about like dealing with children who are overweight. Again, I messed up on this big time. Did not know what I was doing. But both, they gave 2 studies, and one of them was with parents who push dieting, and another one was with parents who just push healthier eating. And they both ended up with the same results, which was heavier kids. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Can you relate to that?
Yeah.
I think I could have been much different had my mom not been in diet mentality. If she had been a little bit more relaxed about it, because I actually, like you said, I had a good body back then, right? But nobody really taught me how to control myself, how to pay attention to my own emotions, my own fullness, and kind of take the reins on that. It was just food is entertainment and food is how we comfort ourselves. But by the way, don't get heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely never talked about our emotions or what was going on, or like, it wasn't until I got to college and I had a roommate that encouraged me to try to talk to my parents. And so I wrote them a letter, and I think I can't remember, but it seems like they even poo-pooed the letter that I wrote them. It was like they just ignored it, or I can't remember, but it's like we just didn't talk.
Wow. And what was the letter about?
I don't even remember.
Just some emotional issues with the family.
Yeah.
That sounds like you have the same kind of family I do. Like, when they know that I go to have been on and off to therapists and stuff. And I think they kind of poo-poo that, and they just don't want to deal with anything emotional.
Yeah. Derek and I actually went to a counselor before we were married, and they were like, if you have to go to a counselor before marriage, what do you think it's going to be like when you're, like.
It's definitely a generation thing. I think it didn't become more acceptable until our generation. But I think we're realizing more and more how important it is to deal with and recognize our emotions. And, I came from, my parents' situation was, my dad's definitely, I would say, an official narcissist, and doesn't really doesn't relate or empathize with anybody else's feelings, thoughts. It's just all about him. And so we had to grow up learning how we were always trying to please him. So we were never taught to pay, like nobody asked how I felt. It was always make sure that he's happy. Right. And then with my mom, she grew up in a very abusive house, and physically abusive house. And so she grew up just scared and trying to stay out of the way. And then she married my dad, who was a narcissist, and she still was just trying to make everybody else happy. So she just squashes her own emotions. She's not allowed to have emotions in her head. right? So we were kind of taught the same thing by default. And I'm kind of breaking out of that, very different from my family that way, but it's a challenge to constantly like, oh no, it's okay that I feel that way, and here's why, and I need to actually talk to somebody about it even if they don't want me to. And
Yeah.
and that I do find that I want to overeat a lot if I'm feeling negative emotions that I feel like I'm not allowed to say. I almost feel like the food is shoving them back down my throat. You ever feel that way?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so usually if I find myself really struggling with food like 2 and 3 days in a row, that's probably my brain telling me, you have something you have to deal with, something you need to say to someone, or something, even if something you need to deal with yourself that you don't want to deal with.
I
And so
don't feel like I've gotten there. Like, when am I going to get that? How long have I been doing this?
you know what? It just takes time and practice, and you have done it several times.
Yeah.
Right. And you just keep going, and I still mess up. I mean, don't think I don't mess up, Mitzi. Right. Don't put me on any pedestals to fall off of here, because I'm still working on it all the time. I mean, just yesterday when my mom's going to complain about how I look and compare me to the old crazy lady in the ward, and I feel like I want an extra piece of dessert later on, and then I'll sit down with my journal and work through, okay, that hurts my feelings, and it makes me feel angry, and it makes me feel judged, and, I have to work through it. And sometimes I've already overeaten, and sometimes I do. Yeah. I'm so sorry. Oh, colds are awful. Oh, I'm so sorry. But no, that is definitely a process. I'm still in that process. And I don't know that I'm ever going to be perfect at it. I think I have this dream that I'll get to this point where that I can do it every time. And my therapist is quick to remind me, no, you'll never get to that point, because you're human still. Like, it will still hurt when somebody insults you. It will still hurt, especially if it's your mom. It will, and that's okay. It's okay to have that feeling of being hurt and angry. But as you get better and better at recognizing it quickly and saying, okay, yeah, you're right, that did hurt my feelings, and here's how I want to handle it. Like, maybe, and then realizing my choices. One of my choices is I can say something and say, you know what? You wouldn't say that to Bonnie when she dresses up. Please don't say it to me. Another choice would be, don't say anything. Just realize she's not going to change. Soothe myself. Say, you know what? It's okay. I feel fine. I don't know. Even if I don't think anybody cares, and move on. And another choice is to eat down my emotions. And that's one of my choices. Right. So I think the more we do it, and the more we recognize which choices bring us happiness, then the easier it becomes. But we're still going to get hurt, and we're still going to have that reaction that we want to turn to that.
I was talking to my friend the other day, and this whole journey we've been on together, we always talk about, she always reminds me that it's a gift that the Lord has given us, because there's nothing else that has brought me closer to my Heavenly Father than this food journey.
Mm-hmm.
So like you said, I don't think it's ever going to go away, because it's a way for Heavenly Father to teach me and to, put me on my knees and to stay close to him. If I didn't have that, I'm sure, he'd give me something else, but I
truly believe our weaknesses are gifts. And I believe that they are, in fact, we know that they come from God. According to the scriptures, God gives man weakness. It's not Satan, right? And I believe very firmly that God gives us each at least one thing that cannot be dealt with without him, cannot be controlled without him, so that we will have to turn to him. Yeah. Right? And I also believe that this can be a gift the rest of your life, because, well, let me share something. I have a friend, her name's Cindy. She is an amazing therapist now, but we actually met, how many years ago? More than 10 years ago, in an eating disorder therapy group. She was the skinniest person I've ever seen next to death, right? But she was really, really skinny. She was very bulimic, anorexic. And at the time, everybody in the group could remember being sexually abused except her. I thought that was interesting. Later on, turns out she had massive flashbacks and she had had some pretty bad sexual abuse as a kid. And, but she worked really hard in therapy, really got to where she mastered it really well. She ended up going to become a therapist. She's amazing. Now she's just a very healthy weight. She feels like she's a tiny bit overweight, but she's not freaked out about it at this point. And I texted her the other day to see how she was doing, see if she wanted to go to lunch. And I don't remember what started it, but she said something about, I know what it was. I told her about a book I was reading about learning about my dad being a narcissist and how to handle that. So she had the book and she said, I'm so sorry. And anyway, she said, yeah, my eating disorder has been showing me lately that I need to, what'd she say? That I haven't been addressing some things that need to pay attention. And it's interesting because she doesn't freak out about it anymore, but she still will have some urges to restrict her eating, you know, to skip meals so that, because her thought will be like, okay, I should lose another 10 pounds or something. But the great thing is now, you know, maybe she finds herself skipping a meal and then realizes, oh, okay, there's something going on. And to her, that is a clue. That is a massive little red light that goes on that says, there's something emotionally going on that you're not addressing. And then when she sits down, she can go, okay, you know what? This situation with my husband is really bothering me right now, and I haven't been wanting to deal with that. Or the situation with my kids is really hard or scary, or I'm overworking and I'm not taking enough time for myself. But she can sit down and use that as her instant, just like if somebody sent you an email, hey, guess what? Something's wrong. You need to check your emotions right now and deal with it. And then she'll realize, oh, that's been bothering me for a month, but I didn't have time to deal with it, or I didn't want to deal with it, so I've just been ignoring it. And the next thing you know, she starts having these thoughts of, I'm too fat, I need to restrict my eating, I need to start skipping meals again. And so for her, it's this great gift that says, oh, whoa, your emotions, something's going on with your emotions. It's not about your weight, it's about your emotions. And then she can deal with it, and then the desire goes away. And she doesn't feel this need to do that anymore. And then as soon as it pops up again, she goes, okay, there's something else I need to deal with. So I think that's what this is going to be like for us. That, you know, I'm looking at, I want to create a lesson that just talks about how, you know, you got this desire to eat at the top, and then there's two paths. One is, am I hungry? If you're hungry, you go down this path. And then that's where okay, what do I feel like eating? Enjoying it, you know, the whole time, trying to focus on it, stopping when you've had enough, right? And if you're not hungry, it's a totally different path, right? Okay, I don't need to deal with food. What do I need to deal with? Okay, how do I identify what my emotions are? How do I accept that I'm having those emotions? How do I identify, accept, attribute? You know, what do I attribute it to? Why am I feeling that way? What just happened? When I wasn't feeling this way an hour ago, why do I suddenly feel like this now? And, you know, kind of figuring out, oh, I feel that way because I had this thought that I realized I haven't got my lesson ready for Sunday, or, you know, whatever. And then action, figuring out what action is that emotion telling you need to take. And I think we just have to get to the point where we're really good at identifying, okay, I do want to eat. Does that mean I need to go straight down this path? Or does it mean I need to take this path?
I like it.
Yeah. And what's happening now with us sometimes is I think we go here, we eat, and then we go, oh, well, crap, that was the wrong path. Wait, let me go back up. And then we try to deal with the emotions. And that's way better than never going there. The more we go back to that emotion side and remind ourselves, oh, there's another side that might be more helpful, we'll just get better and better at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're doing great. I'm so proud of you.
Thanks.
You're doing really good. Well, let's see. We already talked about Bobby. That was my favorite story. So I put the From Food to Faith thing is already on the website, the Food for Thought, I mean. And I will try to get the video on before I leave. We're going straight to Arizona after this. So if the video doesn't get posted until next week, you'd be okay with that? Yeah. Okay. So on let me share this. There's my grandbaby's eyeball sitting back there. He's cute. That's so old, but okay. So on this, I kind of took the list that was on page 234. 234 is the list that talks about, let's see.
Your kids.
Yeah. 5 tips for making the changes at your house with kids, but I changed them a little bit and paraphrased them so that it kind of, how do you make those changes even in where we are right now? Because we're still changing our household. Even if it's just you and your husband, you're changing your household. And that's, to me, honestly, a little bit scarier than changing it with your kids, because my husband and I have a long history and he's an adult and I can't just tell him what to eat. Plus, I don't want to be judged for what I'm doing, you know, so there can be some emotional angst when you're changing the food in your house. But so here's the 5 paraphrased for us at our stage. So number 1, tell your family that you have read a book or talked to a professional who's giving you some very different ideas about eating and what's been happening in your home. Explain that you're eager to make some of these changes. In other words, you know, share that with them. Just keep sharing what you're learning. You know, when you read a great study that helps support what you're trying to do, tell them about it.
Okay.
Then tell them that from now, and by the way, I can already see a typo in there. Sorry. So tell them that from now on, each person will be responsible for choosing how much they want to eat at mealtime. Wow, I've got a lot of typos in here. I'm so sorry. That's really bad. I'm gonna have to change it later. You can tell I had to make it quick. Let's see, and that you'll be providing. Look at that. That's really horrendous. I'm so sorry. All right. And that you'll be providing a variety of foods at meals, which includes some play foods as well as nutritious foods. It's up to each person to decide what and how much they eat. Now, obviously, when you're dealing with adults, now with kids, if you've been telling them how much, you have to do that. With adults, you're not going to tell them that. But if somebody tries controlling you and how much you're eating, then it's okay to be assertive and say, you know, I really appreciate that you're concerned, but I think that I'm the only one that knows how much my body needs or what I feel like eating. Being clear that you won't be a short order cook, but always try to serve at least something that everyone likes. Oh, I've got to fix this. That's going to drive me crazy. I'm a school teacher. I corrected papers for a living.
Oh, no.
I have this problem with my keyboard right now that when I push a T, it often will type it 2 or 3 times instead of once. So if I'm in a real hurry, you can see most of these are multiple T's.
Yeah.
Stupid. Okay. Ask if there's any foods that they would like to have around that are not normally in the house. I like that, like making sure everybody has stuff they love. And then stick to your promise. Don't interfere with other people's choices. Don't comment on them. Stay focused on your own body's feelings, your own choices. I think for us, that's going to be easier than it usually is for like our husbands or, you know, I actually made the mistake back in my diet days of asking my husband to police me. Like,
Yeah,
say,
me too.
you know, don't let me eat this, or put your stuff in this cupboard and don't let me in there. And
Yeah.
I just was setting us up for some serious fights in the future. You know, so stupid. Why did I do that? But, you know, we live and learn, don't we?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I think you're doing great. You know, just be patient with yourself. You're doing awesome. At the end of this month, I'm going to send you that survey one more time.
Okay.
And we're going to see how you're doing. Make sure you take care of yourself spiritually, emotionally, and that will take care of a lot of the food issues, right?
When is our renew date?
We go through this month.
Okay.
Yeah. And then that's why I put those sample classes near the end of the month, and then we'll just keep going.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So.
Next week, Molly's getting her wisdom teeth out
Oh, okay.
in the morning, so.
Well, since you're the only one in the class, let's look and see when we can reschedule.
Okay.
18.
Earlier that day or another day.
Let me see here real quick. The next day is the sample class at 10. What about Wednesday is nuts. When you say earlier on Monday, what time can you do?
I could do like 8 your time.
I can probably make that work. Let me, yeah, let's plan on it. Just know that I may look like garbage because I will be driving the entire day before back from Arizona for 12 hours.
Oh, that's,
So just know if I look a little helter-skelter.
that's okay. I don't care.
There might be a reason. Okay, yeah, let's plan on that. That would be great.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and on actually, let's see, the next chapter. This was a long one.
Yeah.
Okay, and then this talks about the ultimate path toward healing from eating disorders. So it will, cover some of the same types of things, but that'll be fun to look at.
Okay.
All righty. I shall see you next Monday.
Have a good trip.
Okay, talk to you later.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.